I think one of the jobs as an artist is to throw a mirror up in front of society's face.
Yeah.
And because I find it mostly just a lot of things just preposterous and just absurd. There's just at times I feel like a mental giant when I look at the news. I'm like, really? Is this what's going on?
I think a third grader looks like a mental giant while watching the news. Sorry.
Maybe the best place to begin would be, I guess, where I've been friends with Jeff for quite some time. High school, I believe it was, is where we met, and we've been roommates. We've done musical projects. We've done writing collaborations, art collaborations, music collaborations, and we've stayed in touch for a long time. We also lived in San Francisco together, and Jeff worked professionally, and I work professionally there. So not much to say, except for I had a pretty idyllic childhood. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, went to high school in the Great Lakes. It's a good place to be from sometimes, and that's about it, but it's a good place. Pretty standard schooling. Went to art school too, 3 private art schools. Went to one of them on a scholarship, and pretty much after I got out of art school, went into the commercial art field, I guess. So what that means is I became a commercial artist. I have done a lot of set design, building and fabrication and sculpting for, when I say sets, I mean movies, themed environments, casinos, restaurants. You've probably seen my work and didn't know it. And of course, there's no signature on it. Some of my experiences in that world where it was about 20 years long, and I finally got rid of that whole chapter because I figured I would, as an artist, I'm probably best at exploiting myself than letting other people do it. I'm currently I guess I'm kind of a self-proclaimed purveyor of truth and beauty through art and music. I don't know how else to describe myself in that sense. I've been in a few musical projects and bands in the Phoenix area, and I do some writing. I've got some published stuff. I do have some space on medium.com. I've been picked up. I'm writing art criticism right now for Trends magazine. I'm kind of a self-proclaimed art critic, like most artists, I guess, are. And I also started a mural company in San Francisco, brought it here. And throughout the years, I've always kind of kept in touch with my own personal work. So my own personal work is very slow to emerge. I am an oil painter and a sculptor for a living, always have been. And right now, as I mentioned, my personal work's slow to emerge because it's a pretty provocative series, and I'll just say this about it because it's what I'm working on right now. So it's essentially it's a visual state. It's a provocative visual statement or attack on the media, censorship, and tribalism all at once. And it's subversive stuff. It's still attractive stuff. I have a deft hand. I'm a skilled painter. But I primarily make a living doing commissions for architects and designers throughout the Southwest and California, which means I'm still basically creating artwork and paintings for restaurants, homes, and a couple collectors. I tend to shy away from the gallery scene. Not real fond of that. And I so that's essentially where I am. think my perspective is really largely shaped by growing up on a farm, because when you're creative and you're growing up and you're cutting your teeth and orienting yourself to the world, there's nothing like being around the natural order of things.
When did you start painting and drawing? When did you start to realize you were an artist or even a musician?
Probably 4 years old. I did a drawing of my mother, and the teachers were like, "Wow, this looks like you. Did you know that he could do this?" So yeah, it's just, I don't know. My brain is syncing up with my right hand and left hand correctly, I guess. It's technically the definition of drawing is the ability to see correctly.
So you could sculpt. You could sculpt. Do you use both hands, or do you use one hand when you're sculpting?
No, I use two. I use two when I sculpt, but for minute work, I'm right-handed.
Yeah.
But I can do anything to scale, a large scale with both hands when it gets down to something smaller scale. I've often thought about this. Like, what if I became like completely, disabled or something? How would I sculpt? And I thought, even if I lost my right hand, I would just have to work larger scale. And then I thought, if I lost both my hands, I can walk into patterns on the ground and probably draw something pretty accurate. I think it's just in an innate sense. It's just, I think it has to do with my orientation.
It's more about seeing than it is about how you do it.
Yeah. Vision.
That's probably saying,
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
I'm not an artist at all. So
I think all artists and creatives go through that rite of passage, that existential crisis, or whatever you want to call it. And the desert definitely helped me kind of surmount that and get ahead of it in due time. So and I like living here. It's gotten a bit crowded since California's kind of moved here. Mm-hmm. So, which I can only complain too much because I moved here from California myself, but I've been here 20 something years and consider myself pretty much an Arizonian. My sister moved out to go to ASU, and my father was in a position to sell his business, and he was looking to leave Ohio, and he made that decision. So when the family left, he followed. My parents moved out here in the 90s, mm-hmm. and then I finished art school and just drifted out here myself for a couple of years when I lived with Jeff, and then just kept going to California. San Francisco was magical. I loved it, but I think we got out just in time.
How long were you out there? I don't even know how long you're out there for.
I was out there for about 5 years.
5 years? Really? I didn't know it was that long. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I got married in San Francisco, and then
I remember that. I was there.
We moved. Then we moved here. Yeah, that's right. Because you were in my wedding, Jeff.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember much after the wedding, but I do remember. I remember arriving. Yeah. So, go ahead, Greg. I got a question.
I'm curious to know. You just kind of glossed over it real quickly. You talked about an existential crisis, and like everybody has one, and don't we all know what that's like? And
in my video,
I kind of wanted to know more about that, if you don't mind.
He don't want to talk about that.
You don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, probably won't want to get into depth on that right now or here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same thing. I think creative, smart person goes through these things.
I'm not trying to dig too into personal things, but I'm curious to know, is it like a confidence thing, or was it like you just feel like, gee, I can't do it, what I really want to do?
Existential, as in like Kierkegaard existential.
Okay.
You're losing me on that one. Go on.
What?
You're losing me on that one. Go explain. What do you mean by that?
Well, just like existential, the whole existential crisis, just, the meaning. I got into a lot of philosophy. Well, you did too, Jeff. We've had a lot of philosophical discussions. And I subscribed a lot to Kierkegaard and Carl Jung and Immanuel Kant, and I probably read too much for my own good and created that crisis in my head. And I think it just eventually, when you start to gain a little age and wisdom, and you start to expect patterns, you start to see patterns the older you get, and then there's this degree of probability and reliance, and you start to recognize patterns, which kind of creates a comfort, because you have a better way of predicting an outcome the older you get. And I think that brought the comfort and cooled down the thinking jets and everything else. And there's a lot of bliss and ignorance, in the sense that you kind of not ignore the existential stuff you've dealt with. I call it the black cloud on the back burner, but what you do is learn to live with it, not suppress it, live with it, and just work it into the equation of life. And so that's why I kind of have this self-proclaimed, oh, I'm an artist, I'm a purveyor of truth and beauty and aesthetics. My house is full of my art and friends' art and other people's art. And I think it's just, I've figured out as an adult how to strike a balance with that. So, but I do think it's something that obviously most creatives go through. I mean, I wore all black in art school and, questioned my existence and my belly button just like anyone else.
Yeah, I think from my my story now, well, you kind of, Greg, now you do is my thinking was like there was a TV show, I can't remember, it's like Picket Fences, I think is what it was, and there was a law scene. They were in a courtroom, and there was this person who, I don't know what the situation was. He was fired, and this is relevant. He was fired for a job, though you weren't fired for a job, but and I don't remember the whole premise, but it was really interesting because the guy, they were saying, well, he was losing his mind, but it really wasn't true, and he would complain that he could hear his pants were too loud, and the lawyer is talking, he's like, just walk and observe. Your pants are loud. You can hear your pants when you're walking. And there's some people that observe these things in the world, and there's some people that ignore them. We all ignore certain things that are in the world that we overlook. And some people even kind of, like for the pants walking, it's not affecting my day-to-day activity. And so they kind of were going on. It was really neat because it was in the court scene and saying, is that really, is that at all abnormal, or is it abnormal that we don't sit there and observe our pants are making noise as we walk? And so I think my best understanding of what you're saying is, when you say existential and being an artist is being able to see things, is that there are things in the world that we see. I'm not saying that they're all real and everything, but there are things in the world that we see and observe on artists. And you're looking deep. I know when you're looking, drawing a picture, I've done it before. I used to paint, as you know, in realism. You really got to see the way that shadow is falling. You really got to observe the way that reflection is. And otherwise, what good are you?
And so deconstruct it too.
What's that?
Deconstruct it down to shapes, color, hue, chroma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So my guess, based on what you're saying to Greg, is that you were unpacking things a little too deep, and you saw things, and you were young. I think you were like in your young 20s, I believe, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So very young, like you just got a brain, you just got your eyes, and now how do we use it? Your adult brain, your adult eyes, and how do we use it? And I was more late 20s, kind of when I went through that. So I can understand.
Are a tough time for everybody.
Yeah, it is. It's like, do I want to be an adult or still want to be a teenager? So I'm guessing, just from what you're saying as being an artist, you're unpacking things a little too deep, and you were maybe observing things in the world that you didn't like.
Yeah, I pick up on a lot of subtle nuances. I pick up on a lot of details. I think one of the jobs as an artist is to throw a mirror up in front of society's face, and because I find it mostly just a lot of things just preposterous and just absurd. There's just at times I feel like a mental giant when I look at the news. I'm like, really? Is this what's going on?
I think a third grader looks like a mental giant while watching the news. Sorry.
I mean, I just don't. I mean, I'm not
give yourself a better compliment.
I'm not going to say how or why. I'm not going to get political, but I'm just saying. I think everyone can agree on any end of the spectrum that there's a lot of madness going on right now, on both sides of the aisle. And I don't know. I definitely think I see things differently. I don't know if I see them any deeper, but I definitely, I guess, like Jeff says, I definitely have a propensity to unpack things in my own unique way, and I think that's what gives me my unique perspective, which makes my art unique. But again, there's just so many outliers in our society. The talent just slips between the cracks. Being discovered is really only a matter of timing, place, opportunity, and resources. It's nothing to do with talent almost anymore. In fact, I was just thinking about how we've replaced merit in our society with basically it's been rewarded or been replaced with popularity algorithms and stuff like this. Like it doesn't, if it sells or bleeds, it leads, or if it's going to make money, if it's got a capitalist engine in it, then let's not worry about merit. Let's not worry about talent. And that's just the nature of where we are. And the cream still rises to the top. But I stopped beating myself up after I grabbed onto this concept. I actually read it, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I've read all this stuff, and who I like, and that really brought me a lot of peace. I think reading about how unless you're Bill Gates and you have a key to the science lab and 10,000 hours of mastery, or you're a Rockefeller and you're just happen to be around when someone needed a railroad built. I mean, there's just, or the Beatles when you're in, Amsterdam and playing at that one club to get 10,000 hours mastery. It's really just timing. And I stopped that's one thing that I did to really stop beating myself up. Because, you move into stages of personal challenges and growth. And I think that was one thing. It was interesting to watch the monk debates and have one hero hand another hero his ass.
What debates? Debate. I'm sorry. What debates?
The monk debate with it was Douglas Murray was arguing with it was one of the editors of the New York Times and Malcolm Gladwell about whether there's still integrity left in media. And I'm bringing this up because it's part of my current series. And it was just interesting to just watch Malcolm Gladwell, who I love, just have his ass handed to him on a silver platter because he just violated every logical fallacy, and it just could not debate Douglas Murray effectively. And it was really interesting to watch.
Last name. How do you do that? Douglas Murray. Okay, I'm a British author. Let me just kind of go over him if I may. He's a younger guy.
He's making the circuits. He's YouTube's this new thing, and I watch a lot of debates. And I keep my eye on a lot of stuff, both sides too, but mostly a lot in the realms of psychology and philosophy. I took years of psychology in college, and it's never really left me as an interest or a hobby. So I love hearing stuff on it.
If I may, is this the same? Is this the same Douglas Murray? He's an author. He's not exactly young. He's about our age, actually. Mm-hmm. Born in the 70s. He's
young by my standards.
Yeah, well, I guess you're only 10 years older. Usually in defense of neoconservatism. Is that right? Is that him?
Well, that's the description they're giving. That I see it more as he's somebody who actually has a very deep understanding and of a lot of things, especially a lot of different foreign policies. So he's just got a different level of understanding and logic on a lot of ideas and other things. I'm not saying he's always right. I'm not saying anything at all.
I don't know much about. I don't know what neoconservatism is. Yeah, so,
I've never heard of that word either.
Yeah, so let's see. I can
imagine what it is.
Identified as neoconservative was, and I don't mean to go into politics.
No, but I think someone purposely put the word neo in front of it for connotative reasons.
Okay, so Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld had not identified as neoconservatives. So why are they talking in this article then?
Well, maybe it's been established. I have no idea.
Neoconservatives. All right, so it's a political movement that began in the United States and the United Kingdom during the 1960s during the Vietnam War among foreign policy hawks who became disenchanted with the increasingly pacifist Democrat Party. All right, and the growing new left and counterculture of the 60s. So it's basically, it was anti-hippies. But you said that, you're not really into all of his writings. So
when I don't follow him for that reason. I
he
just
liked his
I
debating.
enjoy,
Yeah.
like I said, I enjoy this culture of intellectual debate that's all over YouTube.
Yeah,
I don't really pursue anyone. Well, like I said, I read books, and I think I qualified it by saying I read all of Malcolm Gladwell's stuff. So that's
cool.
why I was tuned into it in the first
Yeah, no, he's all over the board, I'm seeing. So do you think that, and I like to ask this of people, I don't really, I know where I stand on it. Do you think that things are worse in modern times compared to, say, 1,000 years ago?
No, it's all the same.
I mean,
it's the same. I think everything's the same. I think modern life can be harder, but it's a different harder. It's a different game.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a different game. That's all. It can be, it's harder in some ways and it's easier in some ways. I mean, we're living in the most prosperous, secure, safest, peaceful times in humanity, according to historians. And that's probably accurate from what I understand and what I've read. It seems accurate. There's been a lot more tumult and upheaval. I mean, you've got South America has been under it for 500 years. I mean, I think we're just, personally, my opinion on this is that we're too many generations past the greatest generation, who was the last generation to understand sacrifice. So now you have a generation, like I knew my grandfather. He drove a tank in Germany in World War II, was captured. All of his friends died. He managed to capture and stay alive and come home. And he was an instrumental part of my life. He was a pillar of the community. He was a 33rd degree Mason. You cannot earn that. It has to be bestowed. And so he was a tremendous influence on me. And I think now you have a generation, 2 generations later, that they've never met or spoke to anybody who's watched the country come together or pull together for a cause or defend the borders, something real, ration food. I think the whole COVID thing just shows how panic buying for toilet paper. I mean, really, is that where we are?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think things are worse in that sense, that we're becoming more cushy, entitled country. I think we're still young, but as a whole, is humanity worse off? Are things harder for humanity? No, it's the same. It's just the game. The rules have changed. We've changed the rules a little bit. That's all. That's my.
What about art? Is art? Let's not go back 1,000 years. Let's just go back 500 years. Is art better, evolved, or is it?
It's got the same purpose, and I think personally, I think it stopped at modernism. There's some postmodern art that's interesting. Everything else, I think you coined this phrase, Jeff, and I'm sure I've stolen it on many occasions talking to friends.
Please do. I give these phrases away.
Recapitulationism.
Recapitulationism. Yes.
I think you and I came up with that, or you or one of us.
Yeah. No, I know about it. I wrote about it. Yeah. So
I've been applying it to the art world. So I think that's
So Greg, just so you know what we were talking about with recapitulationism, it's like, so there's these cycles in music and in art, and and same thing with a song. If you have a movement of a composition, you have the recapitulation, where you're going to go back and you're going to
recap
it again. Together. But you're also going to kind of add a little extra color, and it's going to change. And when you get to development, it's really neat, because I kind of tie it in with music and art. Is like, these cycles are good if you can jump back on them when they're coming. Like, there's some of these cycles I don't think are ever going to come back, like mullets and haircuts, things like that, probably never going to come back. But there are certain, styles of music and art that start to come back in waves. And if you can jump on them at the right time, if you see what's coming, you can really do neat things, with art and music. And I think that's kind of an artist that can ride on that wave, that second wave, is always good. Because I think if you even look back to the early classical music, I don't want to go on too long, but early classicism. So Bach was kind of like outdated as a composer, but it kind of, because he kept holding on to the Baroque style, it kind of started to have some positive influence and started to get its second wave back. And that kind of led then into the modern classicism. Now, it's my opinion. So, but my thought is that Mozart followed right from that, which started a next new movement. So kind of that's where I was going with that. Now, Palmer,
Well, to accentuate
yeah,
your
go
point
ahead.
on that, you can actually, one of the largest algorithms on Pandora is the Pixies and then the Beatles. So you can say, you can basically trace influence. Everybody has an influence. So in my mind, or to kind of accentuate what Jeff's saying about recapitulationism, is that you can trace influences and then eventually they will get to a part where you mesh or blend so many influences that you actually come up with something that looks quite new. So those, to me, that's the cycle. Is
Yeah.
how high? Like there's a saying in art, hide the tool. How can you? I think how do you hide your influence? So to me, that's what. And so I think artists aspire to trailblaze off of that. Jeff's right. I personally, in my commercial career, I'm trying to ride that wave. I'm trying to. Right now, I'm doing a lot of abstract landscapes. Why? Because they're hot. I keep up on the market and trends and stuff like that. And that's what I've been writing about recently. But most artists at heart aspire to just trailblaze right past that. And I think that's, and then this new talk online about this imposter syndrome, where people feel like an imposter. I think a lot of artists, every artist goes through that too. So, but that's just to put a finer point on Jeff's point, but what recapitulation is in our heads.
You lost me. I have about 20 questions here that I.
I'm starting a few. Go ahead, Greg.
You said imposter. Everybody,
Syndrome,
every
yeah.
artist goes through the imposter thing. What does that mean? I don't know what the imposter
It's when you
thing
start.
is.
It's when you can't shake your own influences, and people say, "Oh, that looks like that and that," and you start to feel like a bit of a charlatan. Like, "Oh, I didn't create the style. I borrowed from."
So every artist is accused of being too influenced by.
And not every artist, but every artist goes through it personally.
Oh, you feel like everybody's looking at you like you're just a copycat. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, maybe when the bourgeois used to commission, or art used to be commissioned by the state and the church, and people didn't consume art back then. Right. So they didn't have that problem back then. Art is now in the free market, and all, everybody consumes art in our culture now. So artists have this free expression, and then so they're going to be naturally inspired by something they saw when they were young, and so they're going to borrow from that inspiration. A lot of times it's very obvious. So I think every artist goes through that.
Yeah. I struggle with that same thing in music, as an arranger.
Oh, yeah, I do. I do too.
Constantly, what I try to bring in, I try to make it new. Obviously, you don't want to have it be derivative, just like something else, that's already out there. And yet you have to be influenced by something. You can't just start from nothing. So you have to try to bring in all the old stuff in a new way. Is really what it comes down to. There's a song that says everything old is new again. And
I have the same thing in music. I shamelessly do it in music. In music, I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with it in art, because I do it in music, because I compose music too.
You don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with exposing my influences through music.
And why is that?
I don't have a problem with that as much as I would through my art.
And why is that?
I don't know, because music's more of a creative outlet for me. It's a less judgmental outlet. I'm not getting paid for it unless we gig, but even then it goes into the band coffers. But it's not something I'm doing for a living, so it's something that I can approach more reckless and unfettered, and it just bothers me less. But I don't spend a ton of time doing it anymore. It's more of a hobby now. So Jeff is obviously a fantastic musician. I don't have the time to dedicate to that. No matter how much I tried,
Thank you. That's very sweet of you.
We'll never catch up to Jeff. Like even Dale, his old drummer. I think to myself, boy, I sent Dale a link to my latest band's release, and he's like, solid effort. I'm like thinking, yeah, but I will never catch up to you.
That's the worst compliment.
So much better, but I will never catch up to Dale. So,
he's unusually good drummer.
I play a lot of instruments and none of them well. So.
That's not exactly true. You play them well. Well enough. Not everyone's a virtuoso. For instance, I I play the piano well. I am not a virtuoso. I cannot go and play some, Rachmaninoff. I won't be able to pull
Right.
it off. But I can bring my own style into just about any song and make it really interesting. I had a question. You were talking about this influences and how it's pushed. I'm wondering if in the universities or the school of art where you studied, did they really push the importance of getting your own style? I mean, the guy he has a gallery right down the end of my street, and he's filling the galleries, and guess what it's pictures of? Beach scenes, seagulls,
Right.
that's selling. They wouldn't even let my
Right.
wife's art in there. She's got stuff in museums. They won't let it in. Like, I don't
Yeah,
see a seagull. I
I
don't see a
know.
fish.
This is the plight. Yeah,
So
this is the
yeah.
plight.
So is the university? I'm just back to that. Where's this coming from? That you got to have your own unique style, hide your influences, and where's that coming from?
Well, it's not. Well, first of all, it's self-imposed.
Mhm.
I would like to use my influences to. Well, first of all, I can express myself without that influence, but it's going to be hard for me. Like people say, I paint like Lucian Freud, which I do, but I can paint realistic if I want to. I'm actually a
Mhm.
very facile, diverse painter. I can mimic almost a lot of styles, but I have my own style is very loose, painterly, a lot of impasto, a lot of movement. It's very Lucian Freud. And I would love to hide that, but I can't because it's also part of me. It's just where I come from. So again, I think it's ever since capitalism is and art has become access to the serfs and the servants and the masses. And so we live in a consumer capitalist society where anyone and everyone can consume it. So it's going to be taste driven. I was just saying earlier about how the measure of merit is popularity algorithms now, not I mean, just take lyrics to a popular rock song and put them up against like a Thomas Hardy line or a Walt Whitman line. There's a difference in merit. There's a difference in intellect and quality, and our culture, being a popular culture of consumerism, is they're just not interested. That's not going to feed the machine anymore. It's going to be sales, and it's usually pretty mindless stuff. And I'm not trying to sound cynical, but this is true. You can talk to any musician about the music business, and they say the same thing. I know famous musicians. I'm sure Jeff does too. They all say the same thing. It's a horrible, horrible industry.
Yeah. Now, I see you're in your studio. Do you have anything by you can grab a show?
Maybe on the next one.
Okay. You had to pick out your best.
Well, I tell you one thing I am doing is interesting. Another side hustle I picked up because an artist has to have his hands in many things.
Yeah.
Is I have been restoring 17th, 18th, and 19th century fine art and paintings. Now, I'm not a conservator, but I've been successfully restoring a lot of pretty cool stuff.
Right. That's really neat.
You were talking about influences quite a bit, and I just want to go way back to almost the beginning of your talk. You were saying that growing up on a farm influenced you a lot, and I don't know what that means, and I just wondering, does that influence your art? What it influences your
it
outlook
influences
on
everything.
life?
My
In what
outlook.
way? What does that mean?
It influences my spirituality, my faith, my politics. It influences my perspective and my outlook on life in general.
But in
Because
what way?
if you grow up in a city, you're subject to this asphalt jungle, dog eat dog, different type of survival game. I grew up watching the natural order of things, watching puppies die, watching the weather ravage our dwelling, watching, feeding chickens, watching, cats give birth, to watching raccoons get rabies, and just understanding, like figuring out how to figure out what time it is in the sky with your fingers. It's just, I think I have this just natural orientation to the natural world living on a farm. and an understanding of, life and death cycle. I got that at a very early age.
And how does that influence your art?
I think because it first directly influences my socioeconomical background, my political leanings, my personal philosophy. It infects every part of my life, and then every part of my life culminates, into my art. Now, some artists will argue that they're channeling when they're painting and things like this, and that's true. I do believe that can happen.
What do you mean by channeling? You mean like something outside
they're
of yourself?
Just a conduit. They're just automatically doing it. They're not thinking about it. They're just channeling.
And where is it coming from then? If it's not,
some people say the divine. Some people just say they're subconscious. It comes from a myriad of places. I just think I'm.
Do you experience that, or is that just what other people?
Yeah, it's just beta. Yeah, I do, but it's beta wave.
I do experience the subconscious composition, subconscious musician, and subconscious art. Once you have the skill, it is no longer conscious effort. I think that's so. I personally know I don't believe it's being challenged by something outside of me, but I definitely know that it is just flowing. It is common. I think that's the meaning.
Like almost like part of your autonomic system. It's definitely induced through beta wave. And shutting down external stimulus. It's not a channeling. It's an expressive
beta waves
thing.
Do you consider yourself an introvert then?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. I would get a hell of a lot more done if I wasn't.
If you weren't an introvert?
Yes, I think I would. Yeah, if I was an introvert, I would get a hell of a lot more done.
I see. So you have to constantly distract yourself with hanging out with people.
I'm social. Yeah. I got like 5 books on my nightstand. I'm like reading them all very slowly, simultaneously.
I got way more than that.
I'd rather
look at Greg's books. So Palmer would call me to ride with him while he'd run errands. That's how socially he needs he needs people around him.
This is true. Absolutely true.
Do you still do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I want company for that stuff.
No, that's good. I actually, it's sad, really sad, but I do that with my son now. I'm like, Jeffrey, come on with me. Going to Tallahassee to Home Depot. Okay, cool. I'll buy a Dr. Pepper. That's what he gets out of it. He just gets the right. It's funny because I'm doing the same thing now. I didn't do it when I was younger, but probably because I was all on your errands, so I didn't need to do it. But I think that's what it means. For social, I understand the challenging. I want to talk about like art. It's to me, I don't know if it's changed much because I honestly don't know much about the art world right now. I'm in a small town. I see pictures of seagulls here. So, but when I was living in Europe, it was 15, 20 years ago, and so that must have been closer to 12 to 20 years. And that was the art then had been out for about 20 years. And I was living in an artist's, I'm not going to mention the artist's flat. And so I saw their art and they were world renowned and they had moved to Paris. And they've had some exhibitions in New York and that. And so I rented their flat apartment, but in Europe, flats. And while I was there, and I didn't say this to them. I really, they're super nice husband and wife artists. Loved them a lot. But I couldn't go into some of the rooms with some of their paintings. It was like from a horror movie. Oh, wow. And so I'm wondering how you feel about art. Is there a purpose to shocking your audience? You don't. That's why I'm asking. Yeah. I mean, I like your art.
Yeah. I think it's a cheap shot. I would love to lay into this one. It's a cheap
maybe
shot.
Lay into it a little bit because I don't really have opinion on it. I see it a lot. I'm not going to insult seagull paintings. I'm not into that. I'm not into extreme violence in art. There's kind of, I'm into, I like your illustrations. They're fascinating. I'd like to show them, but I think we'll just redirect to your website at the end of our discussion. But yeah, please be fair, but tell me what you think about it.
I don't believe in I don't believe in self-censorship. In fact, that's what my latest series is about. It's a complete disdain for self-censorship, which is going on. There's actually a lot of artists that are finding themselves having to do that. And this whole
Yeah.
everything's so polarized right now. So so I don't agree with self-censorship, but I just think that arresting someone's attention with something that's shocking is it's a cheap move. It's just a cheap shot. It's like, it's like a dick joke. It's a cheap laugh. It's just not well thought out. And unless there's something super deep to it, I don't need to be disturbed anymore. I've seen a lot of disturbing art.
Yeah, I've seen enough death. I don't want to see any. I
That's
don't want to
called
be
art.
entertained by
That's
it.
called art for therapy, which I've never I've never personally liked art for therapy's sake. I don't like it. I've never been a fan. Frida Kahlo. I've never been a fan of her stuff because it's all therapeutic. I don't believe that shocking stuff is probably someone else's therapy. That can be in the form of a painting, a sculpture, or rock lyrics. It's just it doesn't interest me, even though it's part of the human plight and it's expressive. Yada yada. I don't care. It doesn't interest me. What interests me is I self-proclaimed purveyor of truth and beauty, and there's some beautiful ugly things and ugly beautiful things, but there's a tasteful way to convey all this stuff. And I think a cheap shot is I immediately turn off. I'm done looking at it. And if there was any message buried in there at all, I'm not going to see it because they've tricked me into looking at the image in the first place. And I don't have any respect for that.
So why are the galleries sucking it up? I mean,
taste.
this is why the galleries sucking up. I mean, you go to any art exhibit now in a museum of modern art. I mean, you're gonna see defecation. You're gonna see, I mean, just
well, art's got nowhere to go right now.
Okay.
So that's because art's got nowhere to go. It stopped at postmodernism, and it's in an absolute holding pattern. The biggest thing right now, it's just the hottest selling stuff is geometric, Scandinavian geometric art, Eastern European stuff. The Europeans, as you know, Jeff, you said you've been there. They're surrounded by gorgeous sculptures that were executed at a time when humanity was just so precise. Now we have CNC machines that build this stuff, and there's not a lot of use for human talent that can build these things. When's the last time you saw true Greek architecture, Greek revitalization? That was in the 1830s. You just don't. To me, that's more interesting to look at, and I enjoy the art in Europe, and it's a different art scene. I subscribe to Art Forum, which is not like Art News or Art America, which is about the art market and what's selling on the art market. It's an international art scene dedicated to true expressionism in the visual arts. So there is an international market, and then there's a European market and an American market. The American market is just a place where very rich people put their money for safety purposes. That's exactly what drives the art market right now. The man who owns the most Warhols buys the most Warhols, and he buys them at an inflated price and has no problem with it because he knows what he's doing. Because he knows that he's driving the rest of his Warhols up in price. It's simple economics. I'm sure you understand that. So, but the Europeans are surrounded by this stuff that's just gorgeous and beautiful. The architecture, the sculptures, piazzas. It's gorgeous there. And so what's ingrained in their aesthetic is these archetypes for beauty. And America we don't have that. We have the strip mall. We have modern art, in a museum that is so esoteric that you don't even want to take your kid into it. It's kind of weird. And I'm not a prude. I'm not bagging on this stuff.
Right.
I'm just
I know. We've seen it. We used to go there.
Should there be art in strip malls? Should there be?
There is art in strip malls, and sadly, I put some art there.
What's that? You have some art there?
Sadly, my art's probably been in a bunch of strip malls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that you're not happy about that?
It's just commercial art. I got to make a living, and I filed my taxes as artist, and I feel fortunate to do that.
So, a question, if I may. So, you have the opportunity and have to sculpt the grades. It's just that you do it under pseudonyms. So if P.F. Chang's calls you, okay, I'm going to sculpt a horse or whatever, and you get the opportunity to do some sculptures like that. Do you put your name on it, or do you just say, no, that's not my style, so I'm just going to do that for some money?
I started a company, a mural company in San Francisco, and it's called Trucage, and it's trucage.com. It's still there. And we would create murals, architectural elements, finishes, everything. And to this day, if I do a painting that is not solely, if it's commissioned and it's not my art direction, it's somebody else's art direction, I rarely sign my name. I will sign the back with trucage, which is French for an art forgery or an illusion. So
that's your pen name.
Yeah, that's my pen name. Well, yeah, nice. I mean, when Jeff's alluding to, I used to sculpt a lot of those P.F. Chang horses. So I've sculpted 10 sets of those horses, and I can knock out a horse a day. But wow. I don't put my name on them. That's how I got my start in commercial art. Is I would just exploit my own skills, and make some money. And I was an art director for a number of years in Arizona and California, like I said prior, building sets and props for everything from movies to casinos to resorts. And I don't put my name on those things. I would, like Jeff said, I worked under a pseudonym.
I didn't know your pseudonym was. All right, you just gave it to everyone, so everyone's going to go be looking for, what was it called again? What?
Trucage.
How do you spell that?
Trucage.
So nobody else uses that? Nobody else?
No,
that's his pen name.
My partner
who's
still uses the site.
What's that?
My partner, who I started that company with in San Francisco, he still uses the site.
Oh, okay. I do remember. Okay, I remember Trucage.
Kind of defunct, really.
Now you don't need to go here. There was another company you worked for way back in the day. There was a handful of people that we knew. No, a couple. I think one girl I remember. And where you were basically painting under other people's names. You would make another name and they'd sell you your artwork. You don't need to say the name of the company, but.
No, we wouldn't sign it. The art director signed it. That was basically an art factory. There's a lot of
tell what that's like. Tell that like people don't know this.
Yeah, that's gone now. That was actually I had a lot of respect for those two guys that started that. That was they're gone now. There's a lot of artists in Arizona that have worked at this place, and it was the Phoenix Art Group, and we basically were these artists with made up names that would do certain movements. It was never really original stuff, but it was very mimicry, and with these made up names that make you think, is that a Picasso? Oh no, it says it's a Parazzo. It's like purposely kind of silly, misleading type
Craig's
stuff.
Face looks like he's sick to his stomach.
But it was.
Wait, go ahead and explain. Where would they sell these? Were they expensive?
Hotels.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. I mean, hotels, hospitality. Hotels, hospitals, healthcare. So when you see like really bad hanging art in your doctor's offices and stuff, that stuff all comes from an art factory.
So you need to get that stuff somewhere. I see.
Well, there's a couple of art consultants in town that I work with now that do that, but those are such hit and misses. It's I don't know. The art world is such a sad state of affairs, and in my opinion, and I'm saying that as a mildly successful artist. I mean, I'm not a famous artist, but I'm also not, living in a one studio apartment. I'm on half acre of a nice property, and I have my own art studio, and I've done well up to now. Considering by my own standards, not by other people's standards.
You have broken the standard of starving artists. You are definitely doing well for yourself. He's doing well for himself. He's being modest. I think for his means of success would be, being like a Pollock. Jackson Pollock or something, where it's in the news and around the world and stuff.
Well, recognition is nice by your peers. I don't know that I need to be famous.
Yeah. But you got lots of work more than, you've got something. What do you got? Just an example. What do What do you got going on this week?
Two painting commissions from they're two private painting commissions, and I have to deliver two restored paintings. They're both 18th century. One is from a Catholic church in Rome that somebody actually put an object right through the face and stored it in a closet in Arizona. And the back of it was rabbit skin glue, because when the Vatican services paintings and touches up paintings, they use rabbit skin glue in the back, and they varnish the front, and they keep things as fresh as they can, as long as they can. Somebody got their hands on it, put it in their parish in Arizona, dried out, stored it, put a hole in it, found its way to me by the person who procured it, and hired me to fix it. Now, I say I'm not a conservator of art, because I don't work with museums and stuff on that kind of a giant professional level. But what I do is people will find me and I will do basic cleaning, and I do it correctly. But it's usually just pieces that are worth maybe $10,000 at most. So you don't want the repair to excel the cost of the painting. So I do a lot of basic, intermediate restoration work. That's the best way to describe it.
Maybe you can help me restore this painting. I got this painting from a really famous artist. I want to show you and see if you can help me. Give me 1 second.
While he's doing that, can I just quickly, this is
a
long time ago, you said something about
here.
I need to.
Oh, he's already back.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Hold on, Greg. I'll get you in a second. That is an old painting.
This is Palmer's. He did it it's me at his wedding.
Oh my!
That
wow.
is so old.
But unfortunately, I got a crack here because
it was rolled.
But I didn't know how to stretch it. I'm like, hey, could you send it to me? And you're like, well, it rolled up, and I'm like, oh, I guess that's the way it stays until it starts cracking.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and
ask the
question
one more time. About an hour ago, you said that artists have to live with it, and meaning you were something to do with this existential crisis, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So I just wanted you to expand on that.
I think it's just that I think it's just kind of like the plight of the modern artist, I guess.
Okay.
It's I think creatives just see the world differently. I don't think there's this old saying, through great pain comes great art. I think that could be true, but I also know that there's also a lot of skilled artists out there with deft hands who aren't really artists. I have friends I went to art school with are so much more creative than me, like way more creative. Now, some of them can't draw their way out of a paper bag, and they would probably be like, oh, I wish I could draw like Palmer. And sometimes I would think, I wish I would conceptualize things like you. So there's varying degrees of creativity. I've definitely got more skill than I have creativity. I've always said that I've got more skill and creativity. And that's probably true because I went into commercial art. And when I came,
maybe that's why you're able to make a living.
Yeah. But when I started to do my own stuff, I noticed that some of the commercial skills and motifs seeping into my own work. And I'm like, this is not good. So that's what I mean by every artist has to live with it. But I don't think every artist has to go through it. Like I just saw an interview or a thing on David Gates. He was a songwriter of Bread, the band Bread in the 70s. Super soft rock, just such a soothing voice. And they were talking to him and he's just like, everybody says, you got to suffer to be this. He's like, I've had a great life, a great career. I settled down. He's like, I'm so happy. He's like, I never went through the whole pain thing. For my art. He's like, I just always enjoyed it. And it was time to stop. He's like, that's that. I'm doing something else. So I don't know that and again, I think that maybe from skill, maybe he had more skill and creativity. I don't know. But it seems to be a rite of passage. I'm not implying it's necessary. Right. I think it's quite common.
Okay. I agree. So my daughter is 6 and, she was, and I'm gonna kind of, well, I'm not gonna give too much going, but basically, she's a young girl and she's scared of things, like a lot of girls, but maybe hers a little bit too much. but she is drawn to the arts, and her paintings and drawings are just becoming incredible. I mean, and it was a year ago. I was like, okay, so mom did this, and she said, no, I did that. Really, like you were talking about you when you were young, very, very accurate depictions of things. And like I'm going, she's like, draw me. She asked me to draw things. She's like, draw a bear. Bears are kind of, for me, hard to draw. I can do a deer.
I can't
Although
draw
bears
either.
is that weird shape, that just, you could probably nail it, Palmer. You get it. But I'm drawing, I go, okay, I'm going to draw like a Yogi Bear or something cartoon. And she's like, no, draw a realistic bear. I'm like, I can't do it. But anyway, then when I do something that I can do, I can pretty much draw anything if I'm looking at it, but from imagination, different thing. But she's going, and she can criticize, and she can, look at it, and she'll draw it, and she'll look at mine and say, no, it needs to have a little bit more here. I mean, she's starting to become an artist, and she's always at the keyboard. I moved it in there so she could have an outlet. She's always singing songs, but she has it.
That's cool.
And like she looked, bad it. Like she looked at Palmer and she's like, oh, he's scary. I told Palmer about that. I go, no, he's not scary. It's just his glasses. And Vanetta's like, those glasses are cool. She's just got, no, it's okay. She won't be watching this, but she's got that it where she's a little bit, disturbed by things, and she's going to have that challenge. And she's an artist, and she just looks at the world in a different way. And I don't know what came first, the artist or it. And I think it was the it, because like when she was born at the the hospital, I went to go see, oh, where's my daughter? In the nursery after she's born, they're like, oh, Emily, yeah, she's a stinker. I'm like, what's that? I never even met my daughter yet. She's a stinker. The nurses had already. You can sleep with her. You can take her to the room. The rest will leave. Really, they kicked her out of the nursery on day one.
Wow.
She's a stinker. But she's very smart, and she's an artist. And so I'm wondering, in your opinion, Palmer, does the artist come, or does the crisis come first?
Well, probably the artist, I guess. I mean, I think the skill comes. I don't know. I had a friend that posted I'll paraphrase it because I changed it for myself. But he said something to the effect of, I got punched in the junk by art, and all I got out of it was this high IQ. I always thought that was
That's good. I like it.
So, I mean, I guess you could say that maybe the artist came first, I guess, on that note. I don't know.
Well, not all artists are rocket scientists. I can see by some of the art. There's no way. There's no way. But there is certain type of artist, which I believe you are, where you do see things accurately. I mean, Palmer would get annoyed by somebody if they say it's a full moon and it's not. It's like, no, it's not perfectly round. I'm like, I don't care.
It's a little sliver missing.
There's a sliver missing. I'm like, no, your eyes are squinting too much because you're an artist.
That's funny.
But this
is my favorite. Is that an inch? I can get a tape measure, and I'm exactly on.
Wow. That's like, was it Dürer in the Middle Ages? He was applying for a job as an artist, and what he did for his acceptance was draw a perfect circle. You know what I'm talking about?
That's like a novelty thing now. People can do.
It's like nobody else could draw a circle that perfect. So that was good.
Oh yeah, I know I know it.
What years? When was this?
Albrecht Dürer. This is in the 1500s, I guess.
1500s.
Yeah.
They couldn't even draw babies then.
Yeah.
Why is that, Palmer? Why couldn't they draw babies back then? Why do they look like
no models?
Ladies.
No models. No models.
Why couldn't they have models of babies?
They weren't available. Most mothers didn't even survive childbirth. So, I mean, you didn't really
Why
see.
Couldn't they just go have your own baby and sit there draw them when they're sleeping? I think there's something more to. There's got to be.
Artists well, they used to have to dig up cadavers. The medical students used to have to dig up
That's
cadavers.
why I'm wondering. You think there was a shortage of babies then? I mean, they had their own kids. Some of them,
especially in Europe. Yeah, babies
don't sit still.
Kids didn't even survive until a certain age.
Yeah, but I mean, you could totally study them when they're sleeping. If you're an artist, you're like, but I don't think they even realized they weren't drawing babies correctly. Like here's something. You can tell me about this. Did you ever know that there's like no historical record of the color of blue until about 500 years ago? It's not in the Bible. They describe the ocean and the sky as green.
Yeah,
Did they
all
not
that,
see blue? Did this change when they started harvesting blueberries?
Yeah, where vermilion used to be a different. Yeah, colors have changed throughout the years.
So maybe the baby's pictures of you changed in their minds too.
We think we have a different rainbow today than we.
I think they
didn't have certain things.
There's no record of blue.
They didn't have certain things back then. Yeah, we use different. There's modern colors, modern synthetics, and then there's old. I mean, Indian yellow is still made with bull piss, bull urine, and lapis is still blue, but there's and I've made my own.
I mean, the
colors.
Frequencies exist. The only differences are what our eyes perceive. So
what's available. Yeah, well that's spectrum.
Yeah.
That's different. That's Henry Munsell's color on theory on color notation. That's different than actually mixing paints and stuff like that.
But let me ask this, Palmer. So if you look at the blue spectrum, like today, I mean, yellow is a very, very, very small sliver, and blue is like all across the board. Maybe we just call everything blue. I mean, it's indigo and navy blue and all the different shades, but we all call it all blue. And I'm wondering if we can't see that that's something comparable to yellow in between green and orange. So what I'm kind of wondering is maybe the need wasn't there to see certain things accurately. I mean, I don't know. That's my guess.
I think it was lack of materials and resources. They didn't figure out how to make certain colors until a certain time. Zinc white. I mean, no one used zinc white. No one used. Titanium white's new. People used. I could be turning those two around, but we don't certain paints were even dangerous to use. But we didn't have they just didn't know how to make certain things.
Yeah,
like the purple you see in all of the I'm trying to think, in very early Greek, anything Mesopotamian to Hellenistic, I'm trying to think what periods this would be. I'd have to go back. It's so hard for me to go into the annals of my mind, but basically there was a shellfish that they used that got you purple. And as things happen, then they discover other minerals that can be ground up. Or like when you ground up a certain mineral, it turns to a different color when you add water to it. Look at saffron. So there's just so many different things that they discovered throughout the years.
Yeah,
I don't think
Jeff,
it was for lack of resources.
Throw in that lapis lazuli is a rock that was known in ancient times. I'm looking at Wikipedia and blue pigments. Yeah, and there's cobalt.
But do they call it blue?
And but there are paintings of things that have blue tints to them. So it's not that they didn't have blue.
No, all right.
Here,
hold that.
They didn't have phthalo blue back then.
But Greg, what I'm saying is they may have been putting it on their canvas and seeing it as green.
Yeah. Could be. They called it something different.
So I had a friend, I was like,
but 10. They had lapis lazuli and they had cobalt and they had sources of what we would call blue. They might have called it something different, but they had it.
We still use them.
So then how is it that all of these colors that are, how are all these colors that we have? I'm not saying that the colors didn't exist. I'm saying that their concept of how they differentiate.
Those changed. And they've changed throughout the years. And those are because of artists, because there was no camera. I mean, there was until the camera obscure came around. It was people relied on artists. I mean, if you couldn't put a window there, you just paint a picture of what was outside, and that's a painting. So you use available colors and minerals to create certain colors, and that's what you did. It's called localizing color.
Yeah.
Sometimes my wife and I get into arguments about, well, this is red. No, it's not red. It's pink. It's like,
well, you know what? That's qualitative. That's a quantitative answer. There is an answer. Can happen easily. At some point on the spectrum, purple becomes more red and more blue. So it does tip. Purple's in the middle. So if something's it is physically either more red or more blue. And then you've got hue and value and chroma. So now you've got it can be cooler, it can be warmer, it can be more muted, it can be more saturated, less saturated, it can be transparent. There's so many things.
Well, the one question I want to ask on this, all right, it'll be the last thing I ask. What I'm wondering is, once you put a name on it, does it become more distinct? Like, if you didn't have a name for indigo blue, would you really notice the difference of it between the other until it had a name? Because now you could say, well, this is indigo blue. I recognize that.
Well, I think it's a philosophical question.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's this theory that the Native Americans never saw the Pilgrims coming in the harbor.
Yes, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Exactly.
Yeah, because they didn't understand they didn't have a word for it, and we are limited by what our language allows us to see.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that does that mean it wasn't in existence? No, I don't think so. I think the color spectrum and the way your cones are in your eyes and the way a prism works, I think that is a science, and everybody typically perceives the same thing unless you're colorblind or you have some sort of other impairment. And these things exist, and we collectively agree on these things.
Right.
It's just like, which is,
Like
we
money.
can don't get me going on the woke culture thing, but everyone can agree that killing is bad. We all agree that blue is blue.
Well, that's kind of what I was going to bring up. Is I had a friend who was 10. He was colorblind. He couldn't see the difference between green and blue. We camp and he'd have these beads, and some had different meanings. He's like, is that green or blue? And I'm like, how do you not see it? And so I'm wondering if that color blindness is a leftover thing of, maybe it's evolutionary. I don't know. Maybe there's something.
I don't know. No, I know what you're saying. You're asking if the ship was actually in the harbor, whether they saw it or not.
Maybe we gained something new over the years.
In the woods, do you hear it if no one's there around?
Well, I'm wondering if also we're going to start to see new colors. And so I was wondering, for your assignment, I'm going to give you about 1,000 different new colors to define. Okay.